want to share a story with you. A little over 200 years ago, there was a boy whose mom loved him tremendously and often read to him from the Bible and shared her devout faith with him. Her heart's greatest desire for him was to grow up to become a minister. This boy's mom tragically died from tuberculosis when he was only 7 years old. And that pretty much ended any kind of spiritual teaching or training he had been getting. His father was a Navy ship captain who took him on his sea voyages with him from the ages of 11 to 17. But the boy never had a very close relationship with his father or his new stepmom. When his father got out of the Navy, he started making plans for his son to go to Jamaica and to become an overseer on a slave plantation. The boy didn't like that idea very much, and he rebelled and was able to avoid his father's plans for Jamaica. It was at this time that he fell in love with the woman who would eventually become his wife. As a way to discipline his impulsive and unsettled son, the father sent him back to sea to work as a common sailor. At the age of 19, he was forced to enlist in the British Royal Navy and serve as a crewman on a British man-of-war. This young man rebelled against the strict discipline of the British Navy, and he deserted. He was caught, flogged, chained in irons, and eventually discharged. This man describes himself at this time of his life, he describes himself as rebellious, arrogant, and living a recklessly sinful life. He writes, "I sinned with a high hand, and I made it my study to tempt and seduce others to sin." He ended up taking a job with a slave trader on an island off the coast of West Africa, where he was treated brutally and barely managed to survive. After living for more than a year in the most god-awful abusive conditions, he managed to escape the island, and he ended up getting work aboard another slave ship out of Liverpool. The following year, as that ship was returning home, it experienced a violent North Atlantic storm and was in danger of capsizing. In the middle of the storm, in fear of his life, the man remembered the Bible verses about God's grace toward sinners that his mom had shared with him as a child. And he prayed for the first time in many years. God spared his life, but he backslid almost immediately. Later on, after falling violently ill with a fever, he truly surrendered his life wholly to God. Gave his whole life to God. He returned to England. He married the woman that he fell in love with as a young man. For about 5 years, he captained 2 different slave ships, but eventually came to hate slavery, greatly regretting his involvement in it and fighting fiercely for abolition. Later, he was ordained as an Anglican minister and ended up pastoring 2 different churches that experienced tremendous growth. He would preach sermons and write hymns to complement his sermons. People from all over England flocked to hear him preach, to sing hymns, and to heed and receive his spiritual advice. As he grew older, his eyesight failed and his body began to grow frail. His beloved wife passed away and his adopted niece took care of him. His friends encouraged him to slow down and retire. But in reply, he declared, "My memory is nearly gone, but I remember 2 things. That I am a great sinner, and that Christ is a great Savior." That man was John Newton, who penned the words to Amazing Grace.